to everybody. As I see all these people coming in, we've got about 30 participants today. I'm Joanne Vaughn. I'm the executive director at Circle Gallery for Maryland Federation of Art, and we welcome you to our spring member show. It's always very fun to see everyone. It's even more fun to see the extraordinary art that our members produce. I'm always very proud when people walk in the gallery and we're telling them about the show and they go, "Oh, this is what your members do?" And I'm like, absolutely, this is what our members do. And we're very, very proud of that. The next show will be Eye of the Beholder, which is a found object assemblage exhibition. And then the gallery is going to close for a couple of weeks while we do some office expansion. So we need to just be aware that probably the last week of July, first week of August, we will be closed while we do some work to expand and upgrade our office. So that's kind of it from me for right now. As far as the spring member show goes, I think that our jury, Joey Mánlapaz, did a fantastic job. This is certainly not her first time at Circle Gallery. She earned her MFA in painting from the George Washington University, and she is a painter and associate faculty at the Corcoran School of the Arts and Design at George Washington University, where she teaches all levels of drawing and painting. She's also a lecturer at Georgetown University and teaches at the Art League School in Alexandria. Her latest passion is to conduct art workshops and art lectures to the elderly at several DC assisted living and memory care facilities. And she's widely collected in the US and abroad, and we're just thrilled that she was our juror for this exhibition. We also have a special award, our Conley 3D Award, that we will be announcing. So our Conley Award for 3D art goes to Addison Likens for Dance Like No One Is Watching. This is a fabulous sculpture that sits in the middle of the gallery. It's very fun. It makes you very happy when you see it. It's very fun to see it dominate the space in the gallery. The Conleys, as I think many of you know, are a couple that underwrite this award. I just want to make the point that if you or anyone else you know has a specific love for a medium, they too can have an award at Circle Gallery for our member receptions. So congratulations, Addison, and thank you very much to the Conleys. I'm going to announce our honorable mention awards, and then we're going to turn over the screen to our juror, to Joey, who's going to do some online annotation while she discusses the Juror's Choice Awards. This is new for me, so I'm very excited to see how this works out, and I thank Joey for bringing her talent, her time, and her expertise to this process. So for the honorable mentions, first honorable mention is Will Scott, Path Through the Fog. Our next honorable mention is Ting Yu, Vases Still Life. Our third honorable mention is Catherine Moorman, Skeleton Men. Our next honorable mention is Linda Pop, I Need Four Walls Around Me, 433. Ruth Losner and Kinsey Rollin, Martin Meadow Pond. And with the first juror's choice, we will start with Joey. Joey's going to share her screen and do some annotation as she discusses the Juror's Choice Awards.
Okay, hello everybody. Thank you for attending this reception. And like Joanne said, this is not my first time to jury a show. It's always a great experience because exposed to so many artworks. You know, as a professor of art, I only am concerned with my students' works, whereas these, I'm more exposed to real artists who are out there plying their trade. And I know it is hard. It is very hard to be an artist nowadays, and practically anybody can call themselves artists, correct? So what makes an artist? And what you do is you enter a lot of shows. And as a juror, it's very difficult actually to be a juror because you more or less have to, you know, pick and choose the best, and not to say that the others are not good, It's just that others shine more than others. So that's my contention about being a juror. It's difficult to always select one over the other. One word of advice though, because as a juror, you know, like for this particular show, there were 456 images that I had to go through, and I selected about 56 or 57 out of 456. That's a lot to go through. So what stands out? This is the crux of the matter of entering these shows, is that first of all, your images have to be of very good quality. I don't even look at works of art that are on my screen, for example, for this virtual show. It's very hard for me to select when you know, the image is not in good shape. You know, it's either blurred, it's crooked, it's you know, this small. So there's so many factors that enter the realm of jurying. So just because you're rejected doesn't mean that your work is not good. It's just that maybe the image that you sent was not good enough. Okay, that got that out of the way. And second of all is that, you know, there are so many artists who enter these shows. So how do you stand out in addition to having a perfect JPEG that you send out for these competitions? The second thing that I would look at is what grabs the juror's attention. So it really depends on the juror. So I guess you already know this, right? So you're selling to the juror your work. So, but I know that could be a problem because I'm a photorealist, and maybe you think that just because I'm a photorealist that I only select photorealism, and that's not true. So the common question that I get from my students is that, well, how do you grade art? It's so subjective. I get a lot of complaints from my students who get a D or a C in art. And how do you even get a C or D in art? Well, because there are certain elements in art that remain the same, whether you're doing conceptual art, abstract, realism, representational, impressionism, sculpture, watercolor, whatever it is that you're doing, there are certain concepts that remain untouched. And these are your technique. Do you understand the technique? And do you understand the medium that you're using? So in combination with technique and medium, is that conveyed in your work? And then there's also movement. What is the movement of your composition? What is the message that you're trying to convey? Is there a message? Maybe it's just a fun, frivolous composition, or maybe it's a very serious composition. So what are you trying to tell me? So some of the issues that arise with conceptual art is that you're looking at something, three sticks on a wall, and then there's a whole litany of explanation as to what those three sticks stand for. So it's difficult to grasp conceptual art because there has to be a written message next to it. Whereas with what we're doing here is that it's a little bit more straightforward. And sometimes it's actually not very straightforward. So I have a difficult task of trying to figure out, well, all right, so this, for example, Cindy Mayer, in her composition here, I look at the movement. Is this a tapestry of color, which is very, very attractive? But not only is it a multimedia, it's like a mixed media. It's a mixed media composition. And it's a lot of swirling compositions. So you see all of this, and it's vibrant. It's exciting. There's a lot of color involved, and the repetition of these design elements, I call them, like circles, like here, circles, and this is a bigger concept of the circle. So the whole composition is very exciting to the viewer. It's not static. It has a lot of movement. It has a lot of color. The message is probably, you know, that with the title, sometimes the title gets in the way of understanding what, you know, what the artist is saying. And sometimes maybe it is a clue as to what the artist is trying to tell you. So bound to the calendar, you know, you get the feeling that it's like, you know, life just turns and turns and turns, and it's all the same. You're bound to the calendar, and there's a lot of turmoil, there's a lot of movement in your life, and you're bound to the calendar, meaning to say it's also restricted. It's restricted because of these elements that enclose the movement and the tapestry of color. So maybe that's a lot more information than that, you know, that the artist is trying to convey. But this is what I get from looking at this. So the elements that I mentioned, the repetition, which is a design concept, right? It's a design concept. So I mentioned the circles and the grid, like that. It's a square and you have a lot of lines repeating itself. Here's the circle and these little circles and the dot, dot, dot over down here and circles over there. So it's a really nice unified composition altogether. Okay, so I will move on to the next one. Okay, so here it won the award. Congratulations. So my reason for selecting this is not only is, you know, this is the only time when size matters, right? It's from what I've heard. Unfortunately, I've not seen the exhibition in person, but it's a monumental piece in the gallery. It stands right in the middle of the gallery, and it's huge. So I like the size, and the composition is very interesting to me. It's all very linear, but at the same time, all the all the basic shapes are covered in this composition. So you got a circle here, right here, and here's another circle that repeats itself. And you have a square, you have a rectangle, you have like a pointed oval, and you have an ellipse, and then the curves. So the Addison covered all of the shapes basically in this composition. The artist just threw all of those shapes in one composition and attempted to replicate, I guess, a figure, a dance like no one is watching. So it's a fairly fairly, I think, very happy. It's joyous. The colors are really nice. And there's a lot of movement, even though it may seem static to you. There's a lot of movement because of the the twisting and the configuration of these shapes. Okay, so let me go to the next one. So this is the explosion of color that is so, it's just so attractive. As you know, red is a powerful, very, very, it's like powerful, and it could be violent because it signifies blood. It it signifies fire. It's a hot palette. And so there's a lot of movement in terms of like vortex. The feeling that I got from this was that it was swirling, like the first one. My first pick was the tapestry, and this is like a propeller to me. It you know, all of this, and it all focuses on here in the middle. So, you know, it could signify different things. It could be a flower. It could be a propeller, like I said. It could be a vortex. But nevertheless, the composition is very nice, and the medium of watercolor is it's one of those you know, mediums that's very difficult to control. And you know, I have a lot of respect for watercolorists because as an oil painter myself, I can cover up my mistakes. However, in watercolor, it's very difficult to do. So this, in essence, is maybe accidental, or maybe, you know, some of these portions right here are a lot more seemingly accidental. So even though it seems accidental, there's a little bit of you know, a little planning here involved. It doesn't seem like it's as unplanned as it may seem. So it's an abstraction, but it also could be based on something real, like a flower or whatever. It doesn't really matter. The point is, it's colorful. There's movement. There's you know, the combination of the medium of watercolor and these lines, like the use of crayon. So it's a very nice dynamic piece. So that it's really a very good piece. So this artist has a very nice concept of cropping, and as you know, or maybe not know, cropping is a modern concept. Prior to the Impressionists of the 1800s, none of these artists ever cropped anything. You look at anything, any art that preceded the Impressionists of the latter part of the 1800s, everything is in its complete form and shape, and that's represented on canvas. When the camera was invented in the late 1880s, the Impressionists were the first ones who used this modern technology. That was the technology of their era, the camera. So they started taking snapshots of, you know, busy neighborhoods, busy streets. And when they developed the film, they realized that, well, there were inadvertent croppings of people, of houses, a horse-drawn carriage, and the horse's head is cut off. So it was sort of like a eureka moment for them. And they utilized this new idea of cropping in their own paintings. They didn't do the camera bit. They only used camera as a tool to do their art, to do their paintings. It wasn't only until the 20th century that the photographs were taken seriously as a work of art. So before that, it was only used as a tool to help the artist, the painter or the sculptor, to do their work. So in this particular composition, so the truck, the pickup truck, is very highly cropped, very closely cropped. And so what happens here is that it's a detail. It's the detail becomes the objective, and it's a nice cropping. You see all the all the details on this section of the truck. I just like the way it's done, because when you crop something, you remove the context by which it was from which it was taken. So it's a very nice technique to have used. Not too many entries had this kind of cropping, so I thought it was very unusual for an entry in this particular competition. So this is a very good composition nevertheless. Okay, so last but not least, this was an attractive composition for me. So you are getting the idea now what I'm looking at, right? When I'm looking at my choices for awards, it's the technique and the composition. And how did you use the knowledge of the technique in your own work? And what's the message you're trying to convey to me? So this particular composition, it seems, believe it or not, a little melancholy for me. That's my take on it. There's a lot of agitation in the composition. Agitation because I think there's a sandstorm, or the storm is coming. Oh, look at all the clouds that are forming above. And it's also, believe it or not, very optimistic, because there it is that the cloud is clearing up on this side. So I'm sure a lot of you know about the the 2/3, 1/3 composition in art. So this is a good example of that. This whole cluster is placed sort of like 1/4 or 1/3 of the composition. So it's pushed to the right, rather than, which is more typical of a lot of novice artists. They put something right smack in the middle. So even though the composition is split in half, it's an even split, top to bottom. So you see the horizon level splits the picture plane in half, top and bottom. It is balanced by the asymmetry of this grouping right here. So it dips down into the composition. So it goes down. So picture this without the grouping of fences, then it would just be a very static composition. So again, it was a very interesting and very good composition. It says a composite. I'm not quite sure what that means. Sometimes I'm not so keen with digital photographs that have been altered, because it depends on how it's been altered. So I'm not quite sure how that was altered, but at any rate, the composition is very interesting. The placement of the of the grouping here is strategically placed 1/3 to the right of the composition, and it seems ominous, but at the same time, it's also very optimistic. That's the message that I get from this one. So I think, I think that pretty much explains how I came to choose the 5. And I chose a lot more honorable mentions, by the way. I just, I was just limited with the number that I could select because of the budget. So I didn't want to do a first place, second place, third place, and all of that. I wanted to have a juror's choice, meaning to say they're all on par. They're all very good. All 5 are very good. The honorable mentions are all good. And so in answer to my students' dilemma, how do I grade my students' works? Well, you know these are facts of art. No matter what your style is, no matter what medium you're using, there are facts of art that remain the same. It never changes. All throughout art history, it remains the same. And the more you see of these works, the more you know that there is integrity involved. Integrity and technique. There must be that. Otherwise, it's just paint, paint spilled on canvas or a mishmash of clay. You know, it doesn't mean anything. So the integrity of the work is paramount. And those are the basic elements of art. It must contain all those parts of movement, line, color, composition, technique, all of those, but integrity is the unifying theme for all of those. So I will open the floor to any questions. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and bring it back to Joanne.
If anybody has any questions. So we have a question from Al Naiman, who is his work was the last one you just had up, Joey. It says, what do you think of Jackson Pollock's spilled paint?
What do I think of it?
Uh-huh.
Well, besides the fact that he was the, he experimented with whatever new medium there was for his time in the 1930s, right? He was the newest invention. You know, our time is always with new technology. Whatever products are out there, artists are always there to experiment and use them. And during Jackson Pollock's time, it was latex paint that was invented. So prior to the latex paint, we all use oil-based paints to paint our rooms, our houses. And then come the 1930s, the new product of the, the industrial product at that time was plastic. So Jackson Pollock's inquisitive nature, and he was quite a bad boy, kind of rebel, kind of an artist. First of all, he didn't know how to draw. He did not. He studied under Thomas Hart Benton, right? He did not draw. He failed that class. He bailed out, and he just joined a bunch of other artists to experiment with new media. So that's how his drip paintings came about. So what did they do amongst themselves? They started playing with paint. So they dipped the lipstick and swirl paints all over the place. So the genesis of his drip paintings came actually out of these experimentations with friends. Maybe they were just drinking a lot, and they say, okay, let's try this whole, bunch of paints. And see what it can do. And then he made it his own. So, he owned it. He owned he owned the technique. He made it his own technique, his signature technique. And of course, Greenberg, well, then the rest is history, because he was written up as the macho American artist of the century, because during that time, the only artists that we knew of in America were from Europe. They all immigrated to the United States because of the war, right? So they came to America, they settled here, and these were the artists that we claimed to be the artists. But Jackson Pollock was hailed as the only American artist, macho artist. So his thing about movement of paint is all about his drip paintings. And I don't know if I answered your question. That was a very, very long answer to your question. I hope that helps.
So any other questions? We can pull up anybody's work. Laura's got the sales gallery ready to go if anybody wants to talk about a specific piece or have a question for Joey at this time. I don't see any questions at the moment.
Okay.
I would encourage anybody who's out to please come by the gallery. It looks so much different in person, and it looks so much different placed. We spent a lot of time, David Diaz and Sharon Arsenault, who oversee the hanging of the work of our shows, spend a lot of time making sure that the artwork makes sense to somebody when you come in and you move from a painting to a photograph to a sculpture. And even in a very small space, it's interesting to see how when you go around a corner, you say, oh, and then there's this piece. Your work looks fantastic in the gallery. We're very, very pleased that you share your work with us. We could not do what we do without you all and your hard work. So I don't know if we have any other questions. If not, what I'm going to do is encourage everybody to come in the gallery. Encourage you to be out and about in Annapolis from June 6th to 13th when we have Paint Annapolis. And before we sign off again, I just want to thank you for sharing your work. I know it's not easy to produce sometimes in times that are challenging for everyone. And I know that also putting your work in a juried show puts you out there. And we greatly appreciate the chance to exhibit your work for the community. So Joey, do you have any final thoughts or comments?
Well, I'm surprised that this is the first jurying show that I didn't get that many questions. So I must have explained myself quite clearly. That's how I get it. But I hope that you agree with me with my choices, and I hope you get to visit the gallery at some point and see the works in person. Thank you for inviting me to jury the show, and I am in awe of your membership's works, and I'm grateful for having the opportunity for doing this.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your time and your expertise and your technical knowledge with us. We've all learned something. So thanks so much. And we will see you then at the reception. We'll see everybody hopefully for the next reception, which will be for the Found Object Show for Eye of the Beholder, where the work is extremely different. So thanks so much and good evening.
Thank you.